This is the US Olympic basketball team in '92, or as most people know them, the Dream Team. It consists of 12 of the most legendary players from the 80s and 90s. Guys like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and of course, Michael Jordan. But there's one man missing from this photo: Isiah Thomas. He was a 12-time All-Star, a back-to-back NBA champion, and was widely considered to be one of the best point guards to ever play the game. And yet, he's not on the team. But why? Was it an ill-timed injury, a long-term beef with the star players, or was it a deliberate move to tarnish his reputation? One thing is clear: this one decision cost Isiah Thomas a lot more than just a roster spot. It cost him his legacy. When you think of the greatest point guards of all time, a few people usually come to mind. Guys like Magic Johnson, Steph Curry, or Oscar Robertson. Even Chris Paul and John Stockton get thrown in there sometimes. But unless you're a die-hard Pistons fan, Isiah Thomas isn't a name that comes up too frequently. Even just mentioning his name, some people probably think of this Isiah Thomas before Zeke. But when you look at his resume, it's hard to see why he's so overlooked. Isiah Thomas was born in Chicago in 1961. By the time he was in high school, Isiah was one of the top prospects in the country and was recruited by head coach Bob Knight to play at Indiana. Coach Knight was known for his heavy discipline and outspoken nature, and so he was extremely tough on Isiah. While it was tough at first, Isiah eventually gained the respect of his coach and became the leader of the team. Despite his small stature at only 6'1", Thomas was able to command the floor with his high basketball IQ and unselfish play, earning him the nickname Mr. Wonderful. Zeke led his team to back-to-back Big Ten championships, as well as an NCAA title in 1981, where he was named MVP of the tournament. This college success landed Thomas at the top of the draft board for the upcoming NBA draft, and he was selected second overall by the Detroit Pistons. Isiah made an impact as soon as he joined the team. He'd averaged 17 points, 8 assists, and 2 steals per game in his rookie year, and was named to the NBA All-Star team, alongside fellow teammate and rookie Kelly Tripucka. The Pistons finished the season in 7th with 39 wins, an 18-game jump from the previous season, but missed the playoffs by a few games. The following season, the team made some key additions that set them up for the future. They traded for powerhouse center Bill Laimbeer in February, and then hired head coach Chuck Daly the next summer to oversee the young squad. By his third season, Zeke averaged 21 points, 11 assists, and 2.5 steals per game, and was named to the All-NBA First Team. He led the Pistons to a 49-win season and the 4th spot in the East. They'd face Bernard King and the New York Knicks in the first round of the playoffs, and the series would head back to Detroit for Game 5, tied 2-2. Down by 10 late in the 4th quarter, Thomas scored 16 points in the final 94 seconds to push it to overtime, including the game-tying three-pointer. Although they'd lose the game in overtime, Isiah proved he was the future of the league with his first career-defining moment. The next season was the start of Isiah's first big rivalry between him and the Larry Bird-led Celtics. Isiah Thomas had his best season of his career, bumping his assist total up to 14 a game and getting another first-team All-NBA selection. A sweep of the Nets in the first round set the Pistons up against the defending NBA champions. Zeke and the Pistons managed to grab a couple key victories at home, but they'd ultimately lose in 6 games. The Pistons improved their roster once more heading into the '86 season, acquiring Rick Mahorn from the Wizards and drafting future Hall of Famer Joe Dumars in the first round. But these moves didn't translate to winning right away. Despite another All-Star and first-team All-NBA selection, Isiah Thomas still couldn't seem to find any team success. The Pistons lost 3-1 in the first round of the playoffs to the Atlanta Hawks and headed into the offseason in desperate need of an identity change. That year's draft saw the Pistons select hot-headed defender Dennis Rodman and 7-footer John Salley, 2 key additions to their roster. They also traded for 5-time All-Star Adrian Dantley, yet another big personality. The team adopted a physical, defensive-focused style of play, provoking teams and getting under their skin to force mistakes and win games. This change helped the Pistons earn their new title as the Bad Boys, and Isiah Thomas was their leader, harassing players on the defensive end and spearheading the offense at the same time, all while keeping his teammates in check. The Pistons put up 50 wins that season, good enough for 3rd place in the East and a 6th straight All-Star game for Isiah. They'd sweep their first-round matchup against the Washington Bullets, and then got their revenge on the Hawks in 5 games, which set them up for another clash with the Titan Celtics for a trip to the NBA Finals. After 4 easy victories for the home teams, Isiah and the Pistons went into the Boston Garden looking to go up 3-2. With only 20 seconds left in the game, Isiah Thomas sank a jumper from the top of the key to put the Pistons up 1. After a layup attempt from Bird got blocked, the ball shot loose and ended up out of bounds off Boston with only 5 seconds left to play. Thomas tried to catch the Celtics off guard with a quick inbounds play, but turned it over to Larry Bird right under the hoop. Bird dished it off to Dennis Johnson, who hit the game-winning layup. The Pistons would force a Game 7 back in Boston, where Isiah and Joe Dumars would combine for 60 points, but they would fall just short of the victory and the NBA Finals. Zeke would later say that his Game 5 blunder was the worst mistake of his career, and he vowed to never rush a decision under pressure again. Fortunately for Isiah, he'd get his shot at redemption the very next season, as the Pistons would meet the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. But this time, Isiah proved his doubters wrong. He put up 35 points in a crucial Game 5 win on the road, and the Pistons closed out the series in 6, putting an end to Larry Bird and the Celtics dynasty once and for all. To rub salt on the wound, the Celtics players walked off the court without even shaking hands. Isiah Thomas had made it to the finals for the first time in his career, and that's where he formed his second great rivalry, this time with Magic Johnson and the Lakers. Although Isiah and Magic had been friends for years, that would quickly change as the Pistons took a 3-2 series lead heading into Game 6. Isiah would have yet another career-defining moment in Game 6. Although he severely sprained his ankle in the second half, Zeke continued to play, scoring 25 points in the third quarter to bring his team back in the game. He'd finish with 43 points, 8 assists, and 6 steals, and the Pistons led by 1 with only 30 seconds left to play. But a controversial foul call on Bill Laimbeer, dubbed the Phantom Foul, sent Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to the line. He'd iced the game with 2 clutch free throws and forced a Game 7. Sadly, Isiah Thomas was totally compromised for Game 7, only managing 10 points in 28 minutes, and the Pistons would lose the final game by just 3 points. Thomas and Magic's relationship would sour after the '88 finals, as Isiah would trash-talk Larry Bird, claiming he was overrated because he was white.
I think he's an exceptional talent, but I'd have to agree with Rodman. If he was black, he'd be just another good guy.
Magic publicly disagreed with the statement, which seemed to drive a wedge between the two. The Pistons bounced back from their finals heartbreak by putting up a franchise record 63-win season. But the Pistons made a shock move at the trade deadline, shipping off star player Adrian Dantley in favor of the young and promising defender and rebounder Dennis Rodman. That change catapulted the Pistons even further ahead of the rest of the league. In the playoffs that year, they swept both the declining Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks en route to the conference finals. There, they'd face the Chicago Bulls, where Isiah's third and most famous rivalry would form, with Michael Jordan. MJ was the rising star and the new face of the league, and was making his first big push in the playoffs. He also happened to be the poster boy for the Chicago Bulls, which was Isiah's hometown, so that made things personal. After getting torched by MJ in the first 3 games and falling behind 2-1 in the series, Thomas and the Pistons began to use the Jordan rules to limit his impact. The Jordan rules was basically just glorified abuse, as the Pistons made sure to foul MJ hard on every single shot and layup attempt to try and wear him out. And it worked. The Pistons stifled Jordan on defense, and Isiah led the way on offense to push them back into the NBA Finals. Unlike the year prior, the 1989 Finals was a blowout, as the Pistons easily swept the Lakers and Isiah Thomas claimed his first NBA championship. Zeke had slain yet another titan of the sport, and with 8 straight All-Star appearances to his name, was well on his way to a Hall of Fame career. 1990 was just as good for Isiah and the Pistons, as they'd win 59 games and cruise their way to the conference finals, facing off against MJ and the Bulls once again. Even with a new head coach and a better team, the Bulls were unable to break through, and the Pistons eked out a 4-3 victory to make it to their 3rd straight NBA Finals. They faced Clyde Drexler and the Portland Trail Blazers in the finals, and Isiah Thomas would show once again why he's one of the best players to ever do it. Zeke averaged nearly 28 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds to will his team to a 2nd straight NBA title and his first Finals MVP, beating the Blazers in 5 games. Isiah Thomas had taken down each of the 3 greatest players of his generation, had won back-to-back titles, and had never missed an All-Star game in his entire career. But his success came at a cost. He was the leader of the most hated basketball team in the world, and had strained relationships with a lot of the best players in the league, many of which were his fault. And eventually, that came back to bite him in the ass. Isiah Thomas struggled with injuries for the rest of his career, only managing to play 49 of 82 games the next season. The Pistons made it back to the conference finals, meeting the Bulls for the 3rd straight year. But this time, Isiah's Pistons were no match for MJ, as they get swept 4-0 on their home court. And just as Larry Bird and the Celtics did to him, Isiah and the Pistons left the court before the final buzzer sounded, refusing to shake hands. The Pistons were met with heavy scrutiny from both players and the media, and when Isiah defended their decision by claiming that that's how every basketball player handled losing, most of the NBA turned against him. Isiah's reputation got even worse that same year, when Magic Johnson revealed to the world he had tested positive for HIV. At the time, a rumor had spread that Magic was secretly gay and had contracted the virus from a homosexual encounter. While Isiah still denies it to this day, most people, including Magic himself, believe that Zeke started the rumor about his sexuality. This destroyed the pair's relationship for over 25 years, until they were finally able to set aside their differences in 2017. In 1992, the Summer Olympics were held in Barcelona, and for the first time ever, professional athletes were able to compete for their country. This meant that the US was able to put together an unstoppable group of the NBA's best players to dominate on the world stage, dubbing it the Dream Team. The first 10 names on the roster were announced in September of 1991. There was Jordan and Pippen from the Bulls, Stockton and Malone from the Jazz, Patrick Ewing from the Knicks, the Spurs' David Robinson, Charles Barkley of the 76ers, Chris Mullin from the Warriors, and of course, the 2 legends Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. But Isiah Thomas wasn't on the list. He had more accolades than most people on the team, but his often on-court antics had finally caught up to him. And when the final professional player was announced to the team, it wasn't the 2-time champion from the Pistons. It was Clyde Drexler. The controversial snub was all over the news. Many rumors spread about Jordan and Magic both refusing to play if IT was on the team. While they both denied these claims, a recent tape was leaked of MJ talking about his involvement with the snub of Isiah Thomas.
Rob's gonna call and say, Rob, I won't play with Isiah Thomas on the team.
Even Chuck Daly, the coach of the Dream Team and the Detroit Pistons, didn't want Isiah Thomas to be there. Zeke was understandably upset and hurt by the news, as he felt he was more than deserving of a spot on the roster. But ultimately, Zeke's attitude and controversial style of play had cost him his chance to play on the most famous and influential basketball team of all time. Isiah's career would stagnate after the '92 Olympics, Coach Daly moved on from the team, and the aging roster couldn't keep up the physicality they were once known for. They traded main pieces of the championship roster and lost others to retirement. The team finished with a 20-62 record, and Isiah Thomas would unceremoniously retire after just 13 seasons. It had been just 4 years since Isiah's back-to-back NBA titles, but it already felt like his career was being overlooked. He had a very public beef with the new face of the league, and arguably the greatest player to ever do it. He'd ruined most of his relationships with other great players, and it led to him missing out on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The damage this one decision did to his reputation ruined the entire perception of Zeke's career and accomplishments. Isiah Thomas should be considered a top 5 point guard of all time, no questions asked. He has both the individual and the team accolades. But when you look at the many lists online, his name seems to fall further and further each year. But it's hard to feel bad for him. Isiah was a scrappy, talented, and hard-working player, but was also the face of the most ruthless and barbaric basketball team ever put together. Isiah got under people's skin on and off the court, but his immature behavior lost him his chance to be a household name everywhere around the world. And now, his legacy pays the price for it.